right, I'm here today with George Rodriguez of Tampeno Cigars. As you may know, Tampeno Cigars is on the rise on social media, Instagram. Go out and follow them on their Instagram page. You'll see a lot of stuff. Check out their website and see the wide variety of cigars that they carry. Some of them you may know as the newspaper cigars. You brought some for us to smoke today. What'd you bring?
So what I'm gonna be smoking is gonna be the newspaper Figurado series, and it's actually a Sumatra wrapper. Um, very smooth Sumatra wrapper. It's something that a lot of people have gotten away from Sumatra just because there's so many mixes between real Sumatra, Indonesian Sumatra, and like that hybrid stuff. This is something that I always tend to just go back to. You're gonna be smoking the Figurado as well, but in the barber pole. Good thing about our stuff is that the barber poles are true barber poles. It's not just a Connecticut with a strip of Madura around it or anything like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. You notice those ones that you get that just have the strip and they tend to kind of start to
Correct.
wind off or whatnot.
Those you can cut them, you can unwrap them, do whatever you want to do. If you don't want to take my word for it, those are 100% true dual wrapper cigars.
Okay.
Essentially, these two cigars have the same blend, but you'll notice, and I know you've smoked them in the past, they have completely different flavor profile and strengths. Even though the filler and the binder is exactly the same, but just the wrapper is changing so much.
Makes a huge difference.
Correct, and that one has two wrappers on it, so
Correct.
that right there alone just takes it to a different level.
Yeah. What's the significance of the newspaper?
The newspaper is something that it's been kind of more like a tradition. In Cuba, back in the early days of the cigar industry, there was no molds like the mold that you would see these cigars in and other molds. Now they're being used out of plastic and fiberglass. They last a lot longer and take a beating a little bit more than wood. So what they would do is they would make a cigar, and when they would roll the cigar, they would roll it in either newspaper or some thick paper to help keep the cigar pressed and molded. Twist up the ends and set it out to dry. How we initially started using the newspaper was we had a customer that placed an order, and it was a blend that we made for them, and they wanted their cigars ahead of time. They couldn't wait until the cigars had the aging process that were necessary.
Yeah.
So we figured, let's bring them a newspaper so that the newspaper can help dry up some of the humidity because the cigars were still fresh, and it'll also help get the wrapper. If you notice on that cigar, just like these or any of the ones in the newspaper, the wrapper comes almost like super smooth.
Yeah.
You barely
Nice
see
little
any
sheen,
veins,
like a sheen to it. Yeah.
They're not wrinkled at all like you might see on some cigars, and the newspaper really does that, because the newspaper, being that thicker paper, kind of helps protect it, kind of helps keep it molded. It kind of helps the wrapper had the best overall look and finish, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So when we brought it for that customer, we had it sitting in the warehouse. A bunch of other customers started seeing it. It's like, hey, what's up with that cigar in the newspaper? And everybody wanted it. So we were like, why don't we just make a couple blends specifically and come out with like a newspaper series? And it kind of came out as the newspaper or super premium line.
Yeah.
And it's gone and developed now into multiple different vitolas and multiple different blends and multiple different wrappers and so many different denominations. The newspaper cigar, a lot of people already know it. It's one of my favorites. It's one of my daily smokes. I know you do very well with it.
Yeah, we carry a large variety of them in different vitolas and sizes. What I like about them is the cost effectiveness.
Very.
Right. This is I wouldn't call it a cheap cigar. It's a more budget-friendly cigar.
Yeah, cheap is a bad word.
Yeah, I mean,
Cheap's
I
a
wouldn't.
no word.
Yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't call it that. Like I said, I would put this cigar up with anybody. With any premium cigar out there, that you're just getting it unbanded.
Correct.
Right? And I think where that lies, you get that cost break, because you're not paying for the band, you're not paying for the branding, the box. You're getting, these are bundled cigars.
Correct.
But what people don't realize also is when you buy the bundle for a brick and mortar, it comes in a 50 cap.
Of the newspapers, yes.
Newspapers rather than a 25 bundle.
A lot of bundles usually would be 20 count bundles. A lot of bundles that come out of the Dominican usually are 20 counts. Nicaragua has kind of set the pace on 25 count bundles. But the cool thing that we did, the newspaper actually used to come. It's funny. The newspaper, when we first started doing it, we had it as authentic and as rugged as possible. So it was 25 newspaper cigars, and we would get this almost butcher-like looking paper, and lay the cigars out, pull the butcher paper over it, and cut it and tape it, and that's it. That's how we made the bundles with butcher paper. Over various different things. Now with different regulations on importations, all the bundles have to have the importer, their license number and the size and where it's coming from. So we had to kind of change that up a little bit. So now they come still 50 in a pack, or they come 50 in a pack now, still in the newspaper, but they're actually cellophane wrapped on the outside with all the necessary sizes and all that stuff. So that's the only change.
Tags and stuff.
Correct. What you were saying about it being more of a budget-friendly cigar, that's one of the things that we stand behind kind of at Tampeno. One of the things that I've always wanted to do with the company is keep it very user-friendly in a way. When I first started smoking cigars, I didn't barely make any money.
Yeah.
And I couldn't afford to go out and buy a then a $10 cigar was an expensive cigar. Now that's normal.
Yeah.
Every day, or even 2 or 3 times a week, or however often it was that I smoked. I didn't start smoking every day. And it's always lived in my head, and it's something that I learned being in the business. A cigar is not defined and made up over its presentation. It helps a lot. You know very well on projects that I've worked on, that you've seen other people working on, presentation does really help. The newspaper really helped this cigar's presentation and get notarized. But when I learned, and I think as people are starting to refine their palates and they learn that sometimes you can't judge a cigar by its box or its band or its branding, and you should just give it a shot for what it is.
Yeah.
You'll get surprised sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And what we've done with this is try to be able to reach out to every brick and mortar, to reach out to every customer around the nation at this point, and offer them a premium cigar, something that can compete and hold its weight in anybody's humidor against any other cigar for an affordable everyday price. And that is the whole purpose behind the products that we put out, especially the newspaper cigar.
So what other than the newspaper, you have other categories of cigars that you also have carry?
So really how we have it is kind of in a tier system. It starts off with our just regular long filler bundles. That's going to be your more everyday smoke. That's going to be for your customer that comes in and buys bundles on a regular to take home with them, to smoke at home, to smoke in the shop, however it is that they smoke. That's going to be, they're all long filler cigars, by the way. But it's going to be more of your economical smoke. That's for the guy that can't afford, $5, $6, $7, 2 or 3 times a day.
Yeah.
When you bump up from that, then we have what is called our premium section. Those cigars have a little bit more love dedicated to them, and not necessarily on the construction or on the whole process of making the cigar, but they get a little bit more love in the selection of the tobaccos that are used.
In the blending process.
Correct. The blends that are used for those cigars have higher cuts. For an example, if we use, let's say, a Viso from Esteli, well, we might use a cut 2 or 3 for one of the long filler cigars, but for one of the premium cigars, it might get a cut 4, 5, 6, a little bit higher. The leaves are a little bit thicker, a little bit more oily, a little bit more flavors, a little bit more strength, and those we do bring them in individually cellophane, so those have to get more time in the aging room and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
After that, then comes the newspaper cigar. The newspaper cigar, I want to say, is not only my baby, but the baby of the factory. It's one of the cigars that gets day after day sought after and gets tested time and time again. There's always tweaks and changes being made, trying to figure out how to better the product. Sometimes out of those tweaks and changes, a whole new blend comes out of it, and that's why there's been additions to blends and sizes and all kinds of craziness that has gone on with the newspaper cigar. Besides that, then I would say our top 2 would be the Bella de Jalapa cigar, which the Bella de Jalapa cigar, for those of you guys that don't know, is a beautiful lacquer finish box. I know that you have them, obviously.
Beautiful box.
24 count. The cool thing about it is that it's a sampler style box. So you get 8 Connecticut's, 8 Habanos, and 8 Maduros in one box.
Yeah.
So the purpose behind that was, coming into a lot of shops and not having brand recognition or name. Everybody's biggest thing is space.
Yeah.
I know, I'm sure you've had that issue
Yeah,
before.
definitely.
How do we eliminate the space, like I call it, excuse? Even
Yeah.
though it's not always an excuse, but sometimes
But it is a way to kind of
say, hey, look, not right now.
Yeah.
Well, with the Vega de Jalapa, there is no space excuse. You can say whatever else you want, but it can't be space because you're literally getting 3 facings in the size of one box.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take up much room at all.
No. And it's flashy. Like it is
nice.
an eye catcher. It is definitely anybody that goes into that humidor, I guarantee you, in any of the brands, I mean, minus some of the big name things, you're not gonna get the quality of the way that thing looks. Like it looks like it should be put out by one of the top tier brands, or that cigar should be a $20 or $30 cigar because just the presentation of it.
And I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people are under the misconception because the presentation is nice, the cigar is worth more.
Yeah.
And that's not the point with that cigar or any of the cigars that I manufacture or that I'm in collaborations with, whether it's with a lounge, whether it's with the factories or whatever. My standpoint and what I try to push to everybody is do something that you're proud to put your name on. Do something that will call the attention that you're looking for, but don't get greedy. Because I feel like in any business, not just cigar business, when you get greedy is when you start having issues.
Correct.
The Vega de Jalapa, we can easily say, we're going to sell that cigar MSRP for $12, $13, $15, $16. Box cost alone is expensive on that.
Correct.
But at the end of the day, we're offsetting the box cost by adding the extra cigars in there. So that kind of helps with that cost. Bands relatively, depending on how you order, could be cheaper, obviously in quantity.
Yeah.
And the cigars are as premium as we can make it. They're as good as possible, but there's no point in gouging your eyes out just because the cigar has a better presentation than the other ones you have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the point behind it.
But even then, at the price point that you've put those MSRP wise, I mean, they can compete with anybody.
Oh yeah. The problem with that cigar is that cigar just hasn't had the necessary time and effort put into the marketing and the branding of it. The cigar was made, it was good, it's been all word of mouth sales, if you really think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, have you seen me do any branding or pushing or I barely even talk about it.
Yeah.
And it does well for not even being known much, Yeah.
I really like these Figurado size. It's if you don't have, I smoke really fast, but like if I want a shorter smoke or something really quick, I can go to one of these. I can go to one of your nubs, something like that, and I can get.
I think it's an elegant size.
Yeah, there's a good word for it.
I think it's a size that, and just, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying.
Yeah.
To sum it up, I guess it's just right. It's not too big, it's not too small, it's not too thick, it's not too skinny. It's a cigar that I don't think anybody can really say no to. I don't care if you're a man, if you're a woman, however it is that you identify. The cigar is not something that you're going to say, no, I'm not going to try it. If it's a 70 ring gauge, I can see why you're going to say no.
Yeah.
Or maybe if it's a Panatela or a Lancero, even though, we share a passion for those cigars.
Yeah.
I can see why you would say no. Some people have the misconception that if a cigar costs X amount of dollars, you should get more bang for your buck size-wise.
Yeah.
And what they're not realizing is that it's not so much size-wise, it's more flavor and strength that whatever it is that you're looking to get out of the cigar. This is a cigar that I think time and time again performs great. I think that it burns good. I think it has a good ash when it burns, how it's tapered like that. The flavor profiles on it, not being too big but not being too small, are there. Strength-wise, this one, when I lit it up, and it's been a few weeks since I've smoked this Sumatra Figurado, kind of gave me that initial pepper rush, and I was like, whoa, I'm not used to it. Today, what I've been smoking has been all a little bit more on the medium plus side.
Yeah.
Not that this is a full body, but that initial pepper burst gives you that.
Yeah, it gives you that
shock,
little bite.
Yeah.
So let's get into, how did you get started in the cigar industry?
Well, primarily by accident. I didn't wake up one day and said, "Hey, I want to be in the cigar business." It's not something I ever dreamed of doing. This company has not been passed down by generations. My grandparents weren't in the cigar industry. I don't have one of those fancy, cool stories.
The legacy kind of thing.
I don't. And that's something that I'm trying to build now to leave to my family and to whoever, my daughter or any kids that I were to have in the future want to continue it. Great. If not, then the right person will be fitted. I don't want to see the company just shut down after me. That's not what I'm doing it for. With that being said, I grew up around cigars. My father, my grandfather, my uncles, multiple men in my family that I looked up to smoke cigars and still do smoke cigars. And it's kind of one of those culture things that you grow up seeing that, and it's like, they do it, I want to do it too. And I think maybe it has to do with being Cuban. It's part of our culture. It's just a normal thing.
Yeah.
So I started smoking cigars at a younger age than most other people pick it up. You hear people picking it up in their, mid to late 30s or in their 40s. When I turned 18 years old, I was already smoking cigars.
Yeah.
And, trying to hang out with my dad and my uncles and, playing dominoes and doing that whole, Cuban
The culture,
type.
Cuban culture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I actually ran into a friend of mine at one point who he shared an interest with cigars with me, and we were both younger than most people. And he said, "Bro, wouldn't it be cool one day to have our own cigar company?" And in the back of my mind, I've always wanted to own my own business. I just never knew doing what. And it was one of the things that always drove me crazy. I never liked school. I never was into books and stuff like that. And I said, "You're crazy. I've never been that dreamer type of person where, yeah, let's go out and chase it." That's not me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, not now, it kind of is,
yeah.
but so I said, forget about it. Let's just enjoy the cigar and let's not talk, any craziness. And as time went on, he got married and had kids. I got married and had a kid, and calls me one day and says, "Hey, let's do breakfast." So, all right, let's do breakfast. So we sit down, we do breakfast, and he gives me some cigars. I don't think nothing of it. I take the cigars home, I try them, and I said, "Man, these are pretty good." I call him the next day. I said, "Hey, those cigars were good. Whose are they?" He goes, "They're our cigars." I said, "What do you mean our cigars?" He goes, "I went down to the Dominican and I learned how to make cigars, and I'm starting the cigar company. You're doing it with me." I said, "Bro, I'm not, bro, you're crazy. I don't know anything about cigars." What? He says, "No, for real." I said, "Look, the most I can do is I got a buddy of mine that owns a cigar lounge. I go play dominoes there every day. Let me introduce you to him, and maybe you can get something out of that." So we went, gave him the cigars. I introduced him. He smoked the cigars. He said, "Oh, these cigars are damn good. Whose are they?" And before I could speak, he said, "They're ours." And he looks at me and goes, "When the hell did you get in the cigar business?" And I said, "I guess about 5 minutes ago." And that's how it worked. After that, we did all the business stuff and came out with the cigar and started growing and taking trips to the factories and just learning how the market worked in the U.S. and in other countries and stuff. And had a good little run. At the end of 2021, beginning of 2022, we kind of had different ideas on how the business should be based. And we decided to go ahead and split ways. And I opened up Tampeno Cigars in the beginning of 2022.
Yeah.
Kind of keeping the same idea and the same tradition that I always liked, more of the face-to-face, doing more things like this, even though I'm not good at this technology stuff, but I'm trying to pick it up,
Yeah.
And kept the ball rolling as much as possible and trying to expand and grow, and it's something that I really have a passion for and I developed a love for. I honestly, I think to myself all the time, because you know this, and anybody who's in business knows this, being a business owner can be very hard.
Yeah.
It can be very stressful. It takes time away from your family, from your kids. It can take a financial hit on you, all kinds of negative effects. But I always sit down and think, what's my plan B? If, God forbid, this doesn't work one day, what do I do? And I've decided that there is no other option. I have to make it work because I have to make it work. I can't work in an office. I can't see myself doing anything else but what I love.
This is what
I
I'm
do.
doing, yeah.
All right. So I've taken Tampeno to any level I possibly can and can hopefully continue to try to elevate it to any other level possible. And I found something out not too long ago that kind of gave me a little bit more of that energy, that fuel. A lot of times people ask you, well, what's your story? and I never had a story. I didn't have that traditional Cuban, we grew tobacco type story. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Mariel boat lift that happened in 1980, where a lot of Cubans
Oh yeah,
came
it came
over.
over. Yeah, yeah.
So in 1980, my dad was trying to come from Cuba, and for some reason nobody came to get him. I don't know how the story really ended up working too well, but I was taking my grandma to the doctor one day, and I said, "Hey, so how is it that you guys actually ended up coming from Cuba?" She goes, "We came on a plane." I said, "No, I know that, but how?" She said, "Well, we were looking through, different documents in the house, and we found the U.S. birth certificate." And I said, "Who was born in the U.S.?" And she said, "My mom, so my great grandmother." I said, "Where?" And she was born in Ybor City in 1909. I said, "How the hell did she end up in Ybor City in 1909?" She said, "Your great grandparents or your great great grandparents, her grandparents, um, were Spaniards. They left Spain to go to Cuba, and they were in the tobacco business. They would buy tobacco, take it on a ferry to Ybor City, and they would sell it to all the cigar factories in Ybor City. And on one of those trips, my great grandmother was born in Ybor City. And when she was like 9 months old, they took her back to Cuba. This is way before the revolution, so nobody thought that let's just stay."
Yeah.
So fast forward all those years, from 1909 to 1980, she had gotten married, had kids, had grandkids, and they went down to the U.S. Embassy in Cuba, and they said, "No, ma'am, you're an American citizen. You're free to go whenever you want." So she, at that moment, did what we call in Spanish una reclamación, which is you. I don't,
Go through the immigration process.
yeah, like you claim your family members,
yeah.
but since she was American, she claimed her kids and her kids' spouses and anybody that was under age of 18. Which at that time, I think my dad was like 16, my aunt might have been like 17, or my dad was 15, my aunt was 17, something like that. But everybody was underage, so 14 of them I think were able to come
Wow.
over here. And I said, "That's my story." She said, "That's not your story. You were born in America." And I said, No, but that's my story.
my
I said,
story,
"I'll explain it to you later. You don't know what I'm talking about." So that kind of is something that it's pretty cool, and I try to share that whenever I can, because for the first 2 or 3 years of being in the business, I
didn't have a story.
I was about to start making shit up.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to be known as the guy that lies, but I really need this story. People don't want to talk to me at this point.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, that's what it boiled down to. But I thought it was pretty cool. And my grandma.
So
told me
you do have this legacy of tobacco in
that
your
I
family.
find out
Yeah.
years later.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, "Listen, when I got into the whole cigar tobacco thing, nobody decided that it'll be a good idea to tell me, hey, there's this tobacco background in you." And my grandma looked at me in the face. She goes, "You're in the tobacco business?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "I thought you just hang out with your friends and post pictures on Instagram." And she said Facebook. My grandma doesn't know what Instagram is.
Yeah.
I said, "I do this for a living." She goes, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "You make money off of that?" And I said, "Yeah." And she says, "Wow, this whole time I thought you were just, like a hobby, like you were just playing around." I said, "No." She goes, "Oh, yeah." She's like, "My aunt was a cigar roller, and this lady was a cigar roller, and one of my cousins was a cigar roller," and started telling me all this stuff. And I'm like,
Wow.
"What? Like, where did this get lost in translation?" She goes, "Well, I might have skipped a couple generations, but I guess you got it." And
Wow.
that's how it went. So yeah, I find out years later that there's this somewhat tobacco history in my background that I haven't been able to find out more information on. Not because I don't want to, just because simply I haven't taken the time to really sit down and dig.
Yeah.
And I don't
Well,
really
it's hard when you have your own business. You're trying
correct.
to
And I don't really have many resources at this moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I imagine it's hard to really get in that paperwork through Cuba. I know through my genealogy and stuff like that, it's really hard, even past Mexico, into Mexico, because a lot of records weren't taken care of or whatever. But even with the embargo and stuff, just to try to get information and stuff like that would be very
I think
difficult.
that getting anything from Cuba is almost impossible, especially anything before the revolution.
Mm-hmm.
I think my best bet would honestly just be doing some type of homework to try to, speak to family members that are still
around.
Around, and maybe family friends, and I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be a big journey in that sense. Let's talk about how did you come up with, where does Tampeno come from?
That's a good question. So Tampeno is a name that I've been called my whole life. Growing up, I always said I'm Cuban, and I would get corrected and say, "No, you're not Cuban. You're a Cuban American. You're American. You were born, here. But I always felt very in touch with my roots. Um, I grew up speaking Spanish at home. Spanish is my first language, even though I was born in this country. Um, so I was always too Cuban and too Latin for my American friends that were also born here, because I've always been into Spanish music, dominoes, and the whole culture thing.
Yeah.
But I couldn't really relate 100% with all my family members in Cuba, because I didn't have to live that struggle that they grew up and lived in. I didn't have to wait in line for 4 hours to get a piece of chicken. I didn't have to go to school with holes in my shoes. So I was very fortunate that my family was here and could give me a better life than what they lived. So I was always in this teetering point. Like, I feel like I'm Cuban, but I don't have the same type of, I don't know how to call it, like, struggles that they went through.
Yeah.
And the name Tampeño comes because there's a saying in Tampa for the Cuban Americans and the Spaniard Americans that families migrated years prior, and their third, fourth, fifth generations that live in Tampa. They in Spanish call them Tampeños, like a Tampanian, but it's like a Spanish way of saying it.
Yeah.
So everybody always told me, you're a Tampeño. So my whole life I grew up hearing the term Tampeño. I'm a Tampeño. I'm a Tampanian, born in Tampa, but it means a little bit more than that. It kind of means like the whole Latin.
It's got
culture.
a meaning for you.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I naturally thought, well, I don't want to name my company Rodriguez Cigars. Shout out to Rodriguez Cigars. But I don't want to do JR Cigars, which I can't.
Yeah.
Shout out to JR Cigars.
Yeah.
Because those are my initials. So I was like, I need something that I can have a tie to, a meaning to, and explain to everybody how, that this really means something to me, without trying to just do something generic. I want something organic, something that's true to who I am, and I think Tampeno is as
real
much as I am. I'm Tampa all the way. It doesn't get much more Tampa culture, Latin cigars than me.
Yeah.
I'm in the city every day. I'm moving around with different people. I'm at the coffee shop smoking cigars, drinking coffees. I'm at the different cigar shops. I'm out and about in Tampa every day when I'm in town.
Yeah.
So I haven't been in town much lately. So
tell us about, like, building this company. I mean, you got thrown into it with your friend, split ways. Did you have to start from scratch? You already had these relationships. You obviously have been to several different factories and things like that. How did you hone into how you knew what you wanted to put out? And
the good thing is that I'm a people's person, and I believe a lot in my reputation, and I try to do right by everybody and do as best business as I possibly can. With that being said, I had a lot of contacts that were willing to work with me, continue to work with me, continue to do collaborations on projects for them, for myself, and all kinds of different things. So I believe that I had to start over a company from scratch, from zero, but I kind of had some points on the board already, since I had previously been in the business. I had already had a couple contacts, not what I have now, not the knowledge I have now. I have, as not only a person, as a business owner, and as a company, grown a lot more. But it's been a mixture of hard work. It's been a mixture of keeping my contacts and my clients and all my accounts happy then, happy now, growing. And also, I've been blessed. I've really been lucky. I have a really good support system with my family, who's always been down to help at any given moment. With my friends, with people who say, hey, look, you're a great guy. I love what you're doing. You're one of the new faces. You're somebody that hopefully will be around for the next couple generations to come. And we wanna invest in you by putting in our time and doing things like this.
Yeah.
People don't understand the importance of stuff like this, what it could do to a small to medium brand. They have no idea.
Yeah.
And these are things that I didn't know how much it can really do until we started kind of getting a little bit more exposure on that. So yeah, it's been a mixture of everything. It's been a mixture of rebranding, hard work, being blessed.
Would you say social media took a huge help in getting the brand out there? Have you? I know you utilize Instagram and Facebook and things like that. Is that something that you use as a huge marketing tool for you, or?
Yeah, I never was the big social media guy. I'm still kind of not. I've been forced to kind of do it because it is a free tool, and I just haven't figured out the way to really reap the benefits 100%. Maybe it's because I get camera shy. Maybe it's because I don't know what to talk about. Maybe I don't want to be too extra. Social media has definitely played its part. To me, I think the biggest thing to continue to grow and to build this brand, besides you know the different marketing aspects and articles like the shirts and the lighters and stuff like that, has really been the face-to-face interaction with people. That's something that I don't think will ever go away. I know COVID helped the cigar industry in a way where it was strictly face to face. If somebody didn't come in here and talk to you, you weren't gonna pick them up.
Yeah.
Where COVID kind of gave everybody the opportunity, and smaller businesses like myself, the possibility to FaceTime, Zoom, email, phone call, text message, let me send you samples type deal.
Yeah.
I still really believe in this face to face and let's do business with a handshake and a look in the eye type deal. I've had better luck myself personally in the business when I physically go to a location, whether it's in Florida or any other state. I've been very welcomed very well in Texas, by just coming in, sitting down, and being myself. I feel like me being myself, I bring a little piece of home with me, with a little bit of the mixture that I have with my family, my culture, and the knowledge I've picked up over the last years on cigars. And I think that people can appreciate that for who I am. And the cigars and is one thing. The cigars is the product that I have. It's kind of a no-brainer with the product being as good as it is and the prices that we have.
Yeah.
Business-wise, it makes sense, but
Yeah.
sometimes people don't do things that make sense.
Yeah.
Now, I think once you throw me in the mix, and you can kind of see I'm just a regular guy. I live a regular life. I'm not, taking pictures in helicopters and doing all this fancy stuff to get in all these magazines. No offense to anybody that's in magazines.
Yeah.
I think people kind of can relate a little bit more and say,
Yeah.
you know what, I want to work with this guy. He seems
Yeah.
like a normal person, like one of us.
Yeah.
I put my pants on the same way everybody else does.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I strive to continue to push to everybody is let's sit down face to face. If I can make it to you, I'll make it to you. If you can make it to me, you're welcome to come at any given time. I'm
Yeah.
an open book with the whole business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think that was a big plus for me. I'm a more like I'm not going to carry your product if you haven't been in my shop. If you haven't walked into my humidor and seen the space limitations that I have, or see how my clientele is, or kind of just sat down with me and had a conversation with me or my dad, pops,
That's my man.
and so that's a huge factor for me, is somebody that's willing, whether it be a rep or a cigar owner. And when the cigar owner comes in, the brand owner sits down with me. That's spades over a rep any day.
I
But
mean-
but again, that's what I want, is I want somebody to come in and realize that this is a partnership. This is something that I'm supporting you by buying from you, and then you're supporting me by putting your products in my humidor,
Yeah.
and hopefully we get them sold, and we're doing business on a
Right.
regular basis.
The thing behind that is, and coming from a small brand owner and business owner like myself, I obviously I live out of state. I live in Florida, where most of us cigar manufacturers and business owners reside in.
Yeah.
It's very tough for us smaller guys running these businesses, sometimes single-handedly. I've been lucky enough to have a team now that helps with all kinds of different things, whether it's shipping, invoices, deliveries, so on and so forth,
Yeah.
to get out and to explore and to do that. I wish that I can tell you that I've met every single one of my brand partners, my brick and mortar partners in person.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
I haven't had the chance to.
Yeah.
I try to take advantage of every trip as much as possible, anywhere it is that I go. to be able to do that, but time is never enough.
Never, yeah.
You know, I've been with you for a few hours today, and I've been more on the phone than I've been with you.
Yeah.
You know, and it's something that I hate, but if I don't answer the phone or make those phone calls, then there is no more business.
Correct.
So it's just one of those things where I have to look at it from both sides, and I get your point, and I understand it, and I wish that.
Yeah, but even then, at that point, is that proves to me that even though you're here and face to face with me, you're still communicating with your other brick and mortar partners.
Always.
And that communication, whether it be face to face, whether it be making a phone call, whether it be text messaging, letting them know that you got their back and that you understand that this is a partnership and we're here to work with each other and it's not just a paycheck.
Always.
That is what I'm talking about in that sense of
For me, I see it as and I've said this to you and in front of you and to multiple other people. I don't care if you come to me and you say, I'm going to order $10 million a month from you, or I'm going to order $50 a month from you. To me, it doesn't make you better than any of my other retail partners, because you can come and you can order $10 million from me once and I can never hear from you again. I'm not going to, stop giving attention to the people that are putting food on my table every month.
Yeah.
For the one guy that came in and gave me one big deal and then I never saw again.
Yeah.
So to me, I look at everybody equally. If you can buy more and you have more sales and you have a bigger store or multiple locations than somebody else, I applaud you. And yes, it might seem like I'm spending more time with you, not by choice, more just because your business demands from me are greater than somebody else's.
Yeah.
But it's not that I value you more than anybody else. I wish that I could be on the road doing this all the time, but I still have a family, and I still, the thing behind it is, for an example, if you or anybody else in your shoes doesn't give smaller guys like me an opportunity to at least say, listen, I know you can't meet me in person, but send me samples.
Yeah.
And if that person sends you samples, follows up with you on the samples, sends you an email, calls you, says, hey, can we FaceTime, whatever, at least they're trying.
Yeah.
They might not have the funds and the
make that
resources.
trip, yeah.
Some people dump their life savings into creating a brand and coming out with a product, and then they have no money left to push it.
Yeah.
And I know because I've been those shoes kind of, in a way, you know what I mean? And you have to get very creative, and you have to literally just try to find a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
And then you can start kind of
sometimes
picking your
that
way
gets
out.
overlooked from a brick and mortar standpoint, is that we think we're the only ones struggling, and you think you got all these cigars, you're a brand, and we fail to remind ourselves that starting a business is very hard, and we know that from the start, but we don't see it from that side either.
Correct.
And so
and a lot of times people think just because somebody's a brand owner or a manufacturer that they have a warehouse with millions of cigars in it.
Yeah,
that's
or
not
boat
always the case.
on the ocean, and
a lot of times, people have cigars in the closet of their house.
Yeah.
They get their guest room and they make it, into a
humidor,
warehouse.
yeah,
They turn their garage, and everybody starts somewhere.
Yeah.
Like we've been blessed to be able to have what we have in terms of warehouse space and partners that are always willing to help us with any type of needs.
Yeah.
But not everybody has the same fortunes and
yeah.
that we might have. So it just give everybody a chance, and I don't want to derail this podcast or this interview that we're doing, but just give everybody a chance. You know what I mean? Not even just me. Just if anybody comes to you, hear them out. If they took the time to reach out to you, they don't know how big or small you could be as an account. When you're starting out and you're new, you're hungry. You want everybody.
Yeah.
I got to the point where I was so desperate to sell cigars that I was giving people cigars on consignment, and that hurt me because people, not even, if you're in my town, I can check in on you, but if you're in a different state, in a different city, how do I know if you sold the cigars or not? How do I know if the cigars, you didn't throw them away? I've gone to places where I've dropped off cigars on consignment. This was years ago. And I went back 15, 20 days later, and I didn't see the cigars in the humidor. I said, man, they sold them. This is phenomenal. Thank you, God. This is what I need. And when I talked to the owner, I said, bro, you sold all the cigars already? Like, no, I haven't had a chance to put them out yet. And that rubbed me so bad, because I'm giving you cigars that I paid for already up front, that I put all this time and energy into, on consignment. All you had to do was put them on your in your humidor, on a shelf, on your counter, wherever, and just sell them.
Yeah.
That's it. And whenever you got paid on them, all I was asking is for you to take care of my invoice. And you took 20 days to even remember that those cigars were sitting in your...
Yeah, needed to get put out.
Give me the cigars back at that point. You know what I mean? And start over from, ground zero. I walked all the streets in Miami, knocking door to door. That I'm not from Miami, but, one says, let me go down there. That has to be a great market. We're going to kill it. I walked cigar shop after cigar shop, all of Calle Ocho, all these different towns, all these different cigar shops, and I think maybe 2 people even gave me a chance to sit down with me. Everybody else said, now, walking in the door with a briefcase and a couple boxes of cigars, we're not interested. Owner's not here, don't bother coming back, or, just very, no. Like, if you are a cigar company and you can make it out of Florida, you're doing something all right.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy, bro. This is a very, very, very tough business.
Yeah. So, what do you have in the pipeline that we can talk about, that you've got in the works, that you're working on, that something you have just put out, anything like that?
Well, one of the latest things that we just released is we decided to come out with another section of the bundle line, if that makes any sense. And I created this concept that it's not new. I'm not reinventing the wheel by any means. But I noticed that there was a void in the market for flavored cigars. The flavored cigars you see are either geared to women on the sizes, or they're short filler cigars, or they have cheesy marketing, and so on and so forth. Yeah. And I noticed that there's nobody selling what I would call a everyday smoke or an economy flavored cigar.
Yeah.
So what I decided to do was, with our factory partner in the Dominican Republic, is create a long fillered, full size flavored cigar. And not infused where, you sit them in a humidor and add a little cup of, bourbon, or no. These are fully flavored cigars. And that's
when you say flavored cigars, like, what is the process compared to it, like an infused
kind
cigar?
Of to sum it all up for you is, literally you get leaf by leaf and spray them with a flavored extract. So, for an example, like vanilla extract. Spray the leaves, let the leaves soak it up, then roll the cigar.
Okay, so then every leaf within that roll has
exactly
got that
because
flavor
the
to
point
it.
behind that is for the cigar to, throughout the whole stick, taste like the flavor that it's supposed to taste like, not lose any of the consistency in the flavor profiles of the flavoring that you're putting on the cigar.
Yeah.
And it's something that we really didn't market much. It's something that's been really just word of mouth with our general customers. Hey, we brought this in, and it's done very well. Very pleased with it. It's been very good with the customers. Same concept, 25 count bundle, naked cigars, no band, no box, nothing fancy on there. It literally just says what it is: cherry, cognac, bourbon, coffee, grape, vanilla, whatever the case is. And that's it. And it's something that the stores can do as they please with it. If they want to pick it up as one of their house sticks, if they want to say it's, a Tampeno stick, whatever it is that they want to do with it, I'm okay with it. But I wanted to add something different to our inventory that I don't see a lot of other people doing. You don't really hear of a lot of bundled flavored cigars.
No.
So that's something new that we just kind of released without making too much commotion over it.
Yeah.
In the pipeline, as you know, we have the CMC, which is the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Okay.
That's a cigar that we've been working on now for, I want to say, at least 8 months, 7 months, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And really, it's been more of just the overall construction and the overall blend. I've done some tweaks here and there and played with different sizes.
Because it's an odd shape. It's an odd shape, so you have to. You're really having to do that quality control to make sure that it stands up to the quality of what Tampeno puts out, right?
Correct. It's a hard cigar. What it really is, it's a 660 figurado with a shaggy foot, which is something I had never seen before. And instantly, when I saw the cigar made for the first time, I said, Cuban Missile Crisis. It looks like a missile.
Yeah.
Originally, what came to mind was torpedo. But I didn't want to come out with the cigar and call it the torpedo, because the torpedo's already a vitola of a cigar.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I figured, what kind of cool marketing can we do behind this and kind of tell a story with the cigar, and that's where that came from. So really, it's just been more of the actual overall construction of the cigar, trying to get it as perfect as possible. I can't have a cigar that's gonna be released with a band in a box, and it's gonna be one of the first branded Tampeno cigars, and it have construction inconsistencies
Issues.
when our everyday cigar is pumping
Yeah.
with no issues at all.
Yeah.
And until that was perfected or got as close as perfect as possible, it's something that I had just kept pushing off until it was done correctly. Thank God that the artwork and the design process is out of the way, because that's something that I'm not good at all. I'm not very creative when it comes to that. But the cigar hopefully should be released, I would like to say, by the end of the year.
Okay.
I originally said end of June, then I said end of July.
Yeah. But it's a lot harder than that because you got to go in and not only from the design aspect of it, you've got to get the bands made. You've got to get whether they're going to be embossed or foiled. Then you got to get the box and just if anybody didn't know, is I designed the band in the box.
Yes, you did.
And in that,
I don't know if we were saying
yeah,
that.
yeah,
on
well,
video.
we'll say it out there. I designed the band in the box, and the box we wanted to come up with something that was unique, right? And I think that's probably one of the more harder things that's going to push this project a little bit further because it's a unique box, so it's got to be built out a certain way because the box is going to help push that product to the next level, right? And so not only do you have to get prototypes of that made because it's not the typical box that it's a standard cigar box. So then you got to get prototypes of that made, and then you got to find out what's that price going to be depending on how many we buy.
Not even just that. When it comes to the prototype of the cigar, we have to figure out, is it a 10 count box, is it a 20 count box, how the cigar is going to fit, because it's such an awkward shape of a cigar that it's not your traditional. They're going to be a 10 count Toro box, 10 count Robusto box, 10 count Gordo box.
Yeah, it's one size.
Correct. The box literally needs to be made around the cigars. And that's another thing that's just it's been a process, and I know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. I know the cigar will be released. We get closer every day. If it wasn't for the flavored bundle cigars, I think we probably would have had a actual date set. But the flavored bundle cigars is something that people had kind of already been mentioning before, and I couldn't let that opportunity
more of
pass.
that opportunity is more of a like let's strike right now because it's something that can show dividends right away, as opposed to you're still really into the kind of design and prototyping stage of the of this brand of the
100%.
CMC. So it's something. I know you've talked about it in other lives and other things like that, but like this kind of gives people a little bit more clarity of like we talk about it and you may be anticipating it. It's gonna come out, but it's just like we're still in that process of getting down the road on it and kind of give clarity to them that
definitely. And I'm glad you touched on that because I can't have something come out that is not up to par or better than what we're already manufacturing for the daily basis, the daily smoker.
Yeah.
Besides that, man, we have multiple ideas, multiple projects in the pipeline, multiple other designs that are already done that are just waiting for cigars. I have some stuff that is being made in the Dominican as well. Hopefully we'll be releasing more as like a core line. And just adding, a lot of collabs that we've done with you and other people and stuff that continues to be brewing and working on.
So is the idea behind Tampeno, is it going to be you are going to start to have a core line other than the bundle stuff that will be pushed alongside that bundle stuff? Because I know the bundle stuff, like me, for instance, is I brand the newspaper stuff as Tampeno Cigars. But a lot of people brand them as their house blends or that they're made in their factory in Nicaragua or whatever. So everybody has their own. You don't have a preference whether if they do it or not. But I make sure everybody knows that these are Tampeno cigars. But with that case, are you going to have brands of cigars that are going to come out that are going to specifically be like these are core line Tampeno cigars? Because I know the CMC is coming out as a Tampeno, but
yes,
is that the overall goal or whatnot?
yes, I think that we are at the point where we're ready for that. And you know, when I first started in the business years ago, I was totally against bundle cigars. I was part of that stereotype that thought the bundle cigars were a cheap cigar, that bundle cigars were, you know, factory throwaways and stuff like that. And when I learned that there's actually factories that just produce high quality economical cigars, I said, wait a second, let me rephrase and let me, you know, kind of change my mindset. Because I was, like I said, against it. You know, one of the reasons why I started to, you know, restructure, rebrand, and get to the bundle stuff is because it takes a lot of money to come out with a brand.
Oh, yeah.
And it takes a lot of marketing. It takes a lot of giving cigars. It takes a lot of samples. It takes a lot of traveling. And I didn't have money. I don't have a trust fund. I didn't have another business. I wasn't retired. I couldn't, you know, I didn't have a 401k bill. I couldn't pull a home equity loan on my house for a business that I didn't know if it was going to work out or not. So I said, I need something that I can do that's low, you know, low risk and technically low reward, but just grow it into something bigger.
Yeah.
So my main goal was to just build a solid foundation to be able to bring other projects along. And that's what we've kind of focused in on doing on this last little bit over a year and a half, coming up on 2-year mark, is just making Tampeno as solid and as structurally safe as possible, and getting our foot in the door with the already good products we have, so that way when we do start releasing these core premium lines that are branded under the Tampeno name, people already know who we are, and they're saying, well, if their everyday economical smoke is a damn good cigar, their premium stuff should be, you know, better or as good, you know. And it's a kind of a no-brainer at that point, because I didn't want to run through the same struggles that I had ran through before, and trying to put a cigar in a humidor that was $8, $9, $10 that competed against these names that were already known, and the store owner didn't want to pick it up because it's more work for them. The people that were, you know, kind of come in, the consumers, would overlook the cigars because they had never heard of it. Now, somebody that walks in here and sees a new cigar and says, hey, Christian, what's this cigar? You say, oh, that's one of Tampeno's new cigars. Well, they've already loved all the other products. 9 times out of 10, they're going to pick up the new one.
Yeah.
And they're going to pay a couple extra dollars, you know, because of what it is.
You've already set the groundwork in the newspapers and the bundled cigars, that now it's kind of a household name within that brick and mortar.
Exactly.
It's going to be, you've already got that built-in clientele to kind of push the core line. But, you know, that, and I think that's a great philosophy, because it's really hard getting a new brand without the kind of name recognition like you know, these bigger, even boutique cigars.
It's tough. It's tough. It's dog eat dog. You know, you think that you have friends, and they'll be the first ones to try to go behind your back and, you know, undercut you, or, you know, a lot of people don't do business in a, how do you say, in a nice way, I guess that's how I can put it. And I know business is supposed to be nice, and I know it's supposed to be dog eat dog, and, you know, the better man gets it. I don't think it should be like that. I think this market in this industry is so big, and it's not even, a lot of people just focus and they close themselves on the United States market. And there's international markets that can be explored. There's international distributors, and there's so much more, which leads me to another business endeavor that I hadn't mentioned, but I've been going down to Dominican a lot, and we're actually opening here, hopefully by the end of the year, a Tampeno Cigars SRL is a new company that I formed in the Dominican Republic, which is like an extension or a sister company of Tampeno Cigars here in the United States. And essentially, that company is going to serve multiple purposes in the Dominican, alongside manufacturing and hopefully growing tobacco. But also, my main focus for that business short term is distribution. Dominican Republic right now is exploding with their cigar culture. You know, it was always more of a manufacture country and export, where now it's a manufacturer and you know, they're consuming in the country. There's a lot of cigar shops popping up, a lot of gas stations that's selling cigars, liquor stores. I mean, it's a big thing out there now.
Yeah.
It's a status thing. But I've noticed that.
So it's outside of the resort areas. It's also becoming
Mhm.
very prominent. Well,
General,
that's interesting.
the general public is picking up cigars out there as well, and they're tying it in with a type of higher end lifestyle out there. So what I essentially want to do is same type of structure we have here, but over there, provide an economical everyday smoke that can compete with any single cigar and any humidor out there. Another thing I've noticed is they don't really have boutiques out there. They have 2 or 3 smaller Dominican boutiques, but that's it. They don't have the majority of boutiques that we have here. They don't have a lot of Nicaraguan products. The Nicaraguan products they have is bigger names like Plasencia, like AJ Fernandez, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I want to essentially bring them a whole nother world of tobacco and cigars that they haven't even experienced by bringing the newspaper cigars over there, Nicaraguan boutique cigars over there, boutiques that are made here, or necessarily not made here, but based out of here over there, and give them the opportunity, like we have here, to be able to really come up and say, well, which cigar is better? Even though we can sit back and go back and forth, on which cigar you think is better.
Dominicans that are sitting in their factories and saying that Dominicans are better, and then Nicaraguans are sitting in their factories saying that theirs are better. It's time to kind of mix them and see, let everybody be able to taste all of them.
All right, and I've gone out there and I've given a lot of Nicaraguan cigars out, and a lot of the shop owners out there, it kind of blows their mind. And I think it blows their mind in the sense that it's just something they're not used to. It's something that's different for them.
Yeah.
And, different, I think, in a new market always does good. So that's one of the plans over there alongside multiple other growths in that country, because they do have a very fast-growing economy right now. But the distribution of Tampeno Cigars, and where I'm going to focus on in the Dominican is not just Tampeno Cigars products. Okay. It's going to be other products made by Tampeno and other products made at other factories. It's going to be more of a versatile thing, because I don't want to be focused to just Tampeno products over there.
When so more they of have a distributor.
They have a void for so many other brands and so many other products. So yes, one of the main focuses will be Tampeno products, but why not bring in other products from other factories? It'll help them generate more revenue. We will generate revenue off of it, and it also gives the people just that many more cigars to be able to choose from.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Yeah, that's an interesting new avenue
Correct.
to generate money. Let's jump into, a lot of people know, because I actively push it on social media, but you blended our Pride cigars.
The revamp.
The revamp, yeah, because originally we had went through several other companies to manufacture the Pride cigars, and we had done a run of the first Pride cigars through one manufacturer, and we weren't in the sense of like super happy with it. It was like, okay, this is good for like a first house cigar or whatever, but I knew that I wanted, like you, my goal is to grow and get bigger and become our own cigar brand, distribution and everything like that, growing the business. And when we first met, we really hit it off in a sense of the drive and the dedication that we have to something, and the mindset that we have business wise, that we want to grow and do things, and so I think that was a big connection with us. And then when we talked about the cigars, I'd given you some, and I said, look, this is what we first came out with. What's your opinion? What do you think? And then kind of just started that kind of spiraled from there. Yeah. And we went to the drawing board and kind of you came up with some blends that we were like, damn, this is it. Let's redo the Pride. I already had the designs. I already had basically the groundwork set up for it.
You let me do what I like to do.
Yeah.
And that's what I appreciate,
Give me your thoughts on how when we got started. What was your thoughts on it? Like
Pride. Pride is a cigar that I take pride in.
Yeah.
No pun intended there. It's a cigar that it means more to me than you think it does. It's something that you kind of gave me the chance to prove to you hey, you know, yeah, we do business together, we do good business together. It's worked out in both of our favors. But you gave me a chance to express myself and give you what I think you needed for a cigar. Obviously, we were in constant communication over the blends and over the cigars, and you told me, hey, look, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I want. I had already previously tried what you had, so I knew that I can better it off the bat. You didn't even have to tell me a word, and I knew that I can give you something that you were gonna like based off of the stuff that you've already tried for me and all that. But pride is something that it not only did it help strengthen, I think, our relationship as not only friends but business partners in a way, because I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that anybody I work with
Like
essentially
collaboration.
turns
Yeah.
into a partner at some point.
Yeah.
Where we had the same end goal. Um, but pride also opened the doors to me for a lot of other people to trust me in making cigars for their either their store or their brand or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
So pride is something that I really could not mess up. Pride is something that really had to come out good, and I think we hit it out of the park.
Oh yeah.
I think with everything that you wanted out of Pride, I think with everything that I wanted personally out of Pride, because that's what I really, again, sounds cheesy, but take pride in.
Yeah.
My favorite part of this business is that. My favorite part of this business is going to the drawing board, saying, we have to make a new cigar. We have to make something. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I am not in the business of, I'm going to be the guy that's going to redefine cigars.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not me. I don't believe in that. There are so many different combinations and blends that could be made with different tobaccos from different regions, from different cuts, from different uh, crop seasons, from all kinds of different things. Just changing the position of one of the tobaccos inside of a cigar changes the blend,
Yeah.
throws it off completely.
The
So
aging, all that
there's
stuff.
so many things that go into it
Yeah.
that some people might say, well, you use the same binder on Pride that you used on so and so cigar. Okay, you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
does the
It's
cigar
not the
taste
same
the same?
cigar.
No,
Yeah.
it doesn't taste the same. All right then.
Yeah.
I might have used the same binder, but it could, maybe it's from different regions. I could have used, I don't know, bro.
Yeah. There's so many combinations.
Yeah, it's just hard to even put it into context. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's something that I really enjoy going to that drawing board, and my satisfaction. A lot of people would say is money, or a lot of the satisfaction is recognition. My satisfaction is giving, like I did today, somebody a recommendation. Try this cigar. I think you'll like it, and seeing them smoke it and go in the humidor and buy 3 or 4 more.
Yeah.
That is what I strive on. That is what I want to continue to do. That's why I want to continue to build a team up to handle all the stuff that needs to be handled, and I can focus on what I truly like,
Yeah.
and is doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
Pride is something also that I took a lot of time to do, because I know what it means to you. I know what it means to your shop. I know what it means to your town. I know
family.
what it means to everybody.
Yeah.
And it's something that I try to give a little bit of me and keep it as original to you
Yeah.
as possible. And obviously, with the different blends that you tried and the different things that we went over, when you said, hey, I think we got a winner, I said, all right, let's seal the deal. Let's wrap it up, band them up, send them over to me. We're ready to rock.
Yeah.
Because what you didn't know is that every time I'd send you something, I made a couple extra more. That way, if you said, this is the one I like, all we had to do was just add a few more on, and we were ready to rock.
Yeah.
And I was ready to get that product out. I think I was calling you more about, hey, how's it doing? How's it moving? Than I've called anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So pride is something that I really did take time and effort to sit and constantly go over and make sure that I always had your best interest in mind and what you would like. And I think we have somewhat similar palates
very
in that
similar.
sense.
Yeah. Our interests and our palates are very, very similar. And I think one of the big things is that you understood how much it meant to me, right? Or how much it meant to me and Pops, of what the meanings behind those cigars are. And it serves very different purposes. Pride is a group of lions, right? And we're El Leon Cigar Company, but it also represents the pride that we have in our family, right? The names of the cigars, the judge, the colonel, and the teacher, represent my grandfather, and so that's something very prideful that I have in my family, and me and Pops do have for him, and my family, and has for my grandfather. And so it needed to represent not only our company, but it represent what we felt for this person and how it makes people feel when they smoke it, and the experience of an entire cigar. And so by you sitting down and really understanding kind of the concept behind it and what we were looking for in that, I think it gave you a deeper knowledge of kind of what how important it was to get it made in the right way. And I think out of all the companies that I've worked with and tried to do that, um, it just kind of flowed so much easier. Because I mean, I come from an industry where collaboration is key, right? I worked in the film industry. I was a graphic designer for multimedia markets, corporate marketing teams, and we had to collaborate constantly. But also coming from that film background as a director and producer, I was constantly I had my vision, and I needed my vision to be done right. And this was really kind of my first go at it, as like I want to take that collaborative effort and say, okay, look, this is what I want, but I want you to put something into it.
Right.
I want to have some of your heart and soul into it as well.
And that's how it works best.
Oh yeah,
That's how it works best.
and I
across the
think
board.
that's why it went so smoothly, and kind of just grew from there. And then when we sat down and I told you, it was like, look, I have 15 designs for like
that was
for cigars, and this is the future of what I want to do. And this is something, in my mind originally I was like, I want to do this at multiple locations or whatever. But once the Pride came out, I was like, well, this is something that I want this to be a continued collaboration thing. I think this is where the fit comes, because it moves so smoothly and everything came out so good, and the quality that you put out, and the standards that you set for yourself, and not only for yourself but for the things that you put out there for other people that your name isn't even really on.
no.
I think that's where that collaboration has to be rock solid in my mind.
My job, and a lot of people that own a company, they think they don't have a job. They think that oh, I'm an owner. No, when you own a company, you have more hats, and you wear more hats, and you have more jobs than anybody else.
Yeah.
And one of my jobs is, that I enjoy, is making it as seamless and as easy as possible for you. And by that is, if I don't have to be calling you every 5 seconds, nor do I want you calling me every 5 seconds. And to touch base on what you said about kind of letting me add some of me in there, I like that, because I get phone calls every week of people wanting to make their own cigar, but people don't have the experience or the knowledge. They don't even have any background in tobacco. So they'll call me and say, I want to make a blend. And I say, okay, what are you looking at doing? Well, I want to make, and they tell me the craziest sizes in the world, bro. And I want, African Cameroon wrapper. I want a Candela and Sumatra binder, 2 binders. And I want Costa Rican fillers with Ligero from Canada, and, San Andreas fillers. And when they tell me that, I'm just like, I don't know what you want me to do at this point. I've gotten to the point where people call me all the time. Hey, do you have Colombian tobacco? So no, I don't have Colombian tobacco, but I can get it for you. Well, how many is a minimum order? 50,000 cigars. 50,000? That's crazy. So yeah, but the problem is that I have to go out and I have to buy pacas or bales of Colombian tobacco. I can't go out and spend $4, $5, $6,000 on Colombian tobacco to make you 1,000 cigars and then have it sit there, because nobody else is going to be calling me asking me for Colombian tobacco. So it has to be also worth my while to make it for you.
Yeah.
But these are the tobaccos I do have in stock that I can use for you. Even if they say tobaccos that I have in stock, people take bits and pieces from cigars that they like, or they think they like from cigars, and they automatically in their head say, well, I want to make a blend with this, this, and this. People say, well, I want Pennsylvania filler. Why do you want Pennsylvania filler? What does it do? I don't know. I tried it in a cigar and I liked it. Okay. I want Candela binder. Why? What does that do for you? I don't know. I tried it in a cigar and I liked it. But what how did you
Yeah,
know it was
yeah,
that you liked out of the cigar? So what I've resulted to tell people is, look, tell me what you're looking for. Tell me what your branding is. Tell me what your marketing is. Tell me what you want out of this cigar, and let me try to provide you something that you're gonna get out of this cigar. And what people don't understand with me is that I'm full service. You don't have to spend the money and the time that a lot of people don't have to go to the factory, travel back and forth, and do all these test blends. You don't have to spend the time in trying to find a broker and an importer to bring the stuff in and try to get it to you and all this extra costs. I'm already importing cigars every month. I have everything already set up. I'm on every importation. I can bring samples to try. Let's continue to work on something until we find out what the right one. When the right one comes, I'll get your cigar for you. I'll get it imported. I'll sell it to you here in the United States, already landed at a certain price. Is it a tad bit more expensive than maybe you going and buying it from a factory? It could be, but when you add your airfare, when you add your time, when you add all your other stuff, you're actually spending probably about 50 or 60% more than just letting me do it for you and saving all those headaches. Because I've done all the headache and all the traveling of getting on a plane, being away from my family, going multiple times back and forth. You know how much I travel.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. You know what I mean? And I think that's not just me. Anybody that's in the industry that is at a manufacturer standpoint like I am, it's necessary. You kind of have to do it. You know what I mean?
That's part of doing business.
100%.
Yeah. So out of the Pride that you put out, what is your favorite?
Man.
And why?
I like all three of them. I like all three of them because to me, all three of them are different. They all have their own characteristics. The Connecticut, for an example. The Connecticut is a very smooth Connecticut that pairs well with, I think, almost anything. Most people say a Connecticut's a morning cigar. I smoke a Connecticut at any time. I don't really care. But a Connecticut's a very smooth cigar, very creamy cigar, no bitterness. I think the Connecticut is just a cigar that's for everybody.
Yeah.
If you're a Maduro smoker, the Connecticut's not going to disappoint you.
Yeah.
It's not going to be as strong as what you like, but it's going to be very flavorful.
Yeah.
If you're a Habano smoker, you're going to get some characteristics that you like, but it might not be as peppery as what you're used to, so on and so forth.
And that's where we went with that. And I think you accomplished perfectly that what I wanted in each of these cigars. Like I purposely told you what I wanted based on my flavor palette, right? I don't like a lot of pepper. I don't want my Maduro to be a pepper bomb, but I want my cigars to have flavor. I want them to be full in flavor, but I don't want them to be
full in strength.
Yeah, punch me in the face.
Correct. And that's the hard thing with the industry that we have today is a lot of people are so focused on what they think is a flavor bomb, and really it's a pepper bomb or it's a strength bomb.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to make a flavorful ass kicker cigar. It's kind of like you have to compromise one for the other. So when you told me, hey, I don't want these cigars to be overpowering, I don't want these cigars to be the most peppery cigars out there, I said, perfect. He's looking for what I like and what I like to do, which is provide flavor. Yeah. I'll take flavor over strength all day long.
Yeah.
But that's my personal preference. That's my personal palate. Other people, tend to differ, to see things in a different light than I do.
Yeah.
But that was the point with Pride, and I think we were on the same page and we clicked with that from the beginning, which made the whole process so much easier.
Yeah.
The Habano, for an example, the Habano, I'm biased towards it because I'm a Habano smoker. I really like Habano. I've always liked Habano. With that being said, the Habano to me is very flavorful, and it's leading into that medium plus strength, but it's not a strength that overpowers the flavor. I think the flavors are still more dominant than the flavors are, than the strength is. Sorry. The Maduro is a cigar that I always like. That Maduro is something that a lot of people don't smoke because they're scared. They see a cigar, they see it's dark, and they think this is gonna put me on my ass. Yeah. And it not always is it like that. That Maduro is a cigar that if you're a Habano smoker, you can smoke it with no problem. If you're a Connecticut smoker, it's something you can kind of ease into a little bit because that is not a Maduro that's going to sit you down. That is a Maduro that you're going to enjoy. Maduro flavors that are very good, that are very popular right now because a lot of people weren't Maduro smokers a long time ago. At least, not the majority.
Majority, yeah.
And you're gonna get those flavors. You're gonna get the different notes and the different textures of a Maduro without that. Man, I feel queasy. I gotta eat some sugar. And that's what I was trying to go for that, based off of what you were telling me. Just because I think everybody deserves to experience and try a Maduro without that bad taste in their mouth after.
And a lot of my followers understand, know that I'm a mild to medium smoker, and I used to get a lot of shit because I was mostly Connecticut, I was a Connecticut smoker, and I've transitioned into that medium. The Habano has been kind of my go-to cigar for the past year and a half now, and out of these three, the Maduro is my favorite.
Really?
And so it's so dynamic, it's so flavorful. It's not the cigar that I'm gonna sit there and have sweat rings and be pale and queasy or whatever. And it's surprising because I'm one of those guys that I fear a dark wrapper, right? If I see a dark wrapper, even somebody's like, oh yeah, that's not strong, I'm afraid to get it because I don't like feeling like that.
You can't always feel like that. You gotta give everything a shot. And I know it's tough because sometimes you pick up a $12 cigar, you light it up, and then you don't like it.
Oh yeah.
I always tell everybody, give it a little bit more of a shot. I have some cigars, mine personally, that start off in the very peppery, but then you smoke them just a tad bit more, and they mellow out, and it turns into be a very good smoke.
Yeah.
Like this one, when I lit this one up, this one was very peppery on the beginning, and I eased into it, and it's broadened up, and it's been more flavor than anything else.
Yeah.
So same thing, kind of just
giving it a shot. Yeah.
But that Maduro actually, I think, starts off with a little bit more pepper than I think that we initially wanted.
Yeah.
But it immediately it
transitions.
Exactly.
Correct. It
and
transitions
that's
very smooth, very dynamic.
That Maduro has very good transitions.
Oh yeah, definitely.
They all three do, but the Maduro especially, because I feel like you can notice the transitions a little bit more on Maduro.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's what I like about it. And I don't necessarily hate. I don't necessarily dislike pepper. I hate pepper bombs. I hate where you're just getting that pepper in the back of your taste buds, just the back of your palate. You have that like you've eaten a lot of pepper on something.
But do you know what that is? When you feel that tingling in the back of your throat, that peppery back there, a lot of people confuse pepper and strength for what really is ammonia.
Mm-hmm.
Tobacco leaves have ammonia naturally in them. That's why when they dry out and they turn this color, they lose their ammonia.
Mm-hmm.
When a tobacco leaf is under fermented or under aged, it still has some ammonia in it. So if it's younger, the tobacco is younger than when it needs to be, you'll get that
pepper back in the back of your
What
throat.
has happened now, because there's such a pepper craze and everybody wants an ass-kicking strong cigar, certain factories are even using under-fermented tobacco. By under-fermented, I don't mean anything that's, let's say if tobacco needs to be fermented at 100%, they're using it at 92% or at 94%, just to give it that little touch of pepper. And that's what you're getting out of it.
Okay.
You shouldn't feel that burning, tickling sensation in the back of your throat. If you're gonna feel any pepper, you should feel the pepper on your retrohale, or on the palate. It's kind of hard sometimes. I'm a real big retrohale fan. I think that's where the majority of your flavors and aromas come from.
Yeah.
But that's what you should be feeling, and not the pepper on the back of your throat.
Yeah. Okay.
And
so that's what I don't.
Yeah.
People confuse. Yeah. And that's one of those things I just don't like. I don't mind that little pepper on the in the retrohale or in the tip of your tongue when you get it on the first light or whatever, and you get that from the Maduro. But as you get through those transitions, you're getting different flavors. You're getting the dynamic tastes of the tobacco that you use to blend this cigar, and I think you did a great job.
Thank you, bro.
So is there anything, where can people, if somebody, other than, I don't have an online store right now, you can DM me on Instagram or message me on Facebook, and I will send anywhere in the United States. I'll ship anywhere. You have to just kind of know what I've got at this point.
Correct.
But is there a go-to website that you want to push to get people can try your cigars.
Correct. So what we have right now is if you do go on our website, which is TampenoCigars.com, we have a store locator. So if you would like to first go and see if there's a brick and mortar in your area, in your state, in your city, you can go on the store locator. There's a map and kind of see what's closest to you. If everything's out of driving distance, I always recommend people at our own factory shop, which is one of our online retail partners. We have some of our newspaper cigars that we've made exclusively for Privada Cigars on their website as well. And really, if you just type in Tampeno Cigars on Google, which I learned this today, multiple different stores that carry our stuff, whether online or brick and mortar, will pop up as well. And you can kind of just gauge it that way. You know what I mean? Really, for anybody that's out of the country, I would recommend at our own factory shop just because they're really good about shipping international.
Okay.
Like I think yesterday, I was talking to him and he was preparing orders of the newspaper cigars going to Brazil and going to the UK.
Oh, wow.
So we've kind of got on an international level thanks
That's
to
cool.
his platform being more based in international
Yeah.
level. Anybody local, you can check them out as well. Or like I learned today, go on Google, just type in Tampeno Cigars and multiple different online and brick and mortar partners.
Okay. Also, the Pride cigar is exclusively right now available at Elion Cigars. You can message me on Facebook or Instagram. I'll actually do, if you mention this interview, I will do a 3-pack with a 10% discount. Just message me for the details, and we'll go from there. That'll be our interview deal for this, and I will accept it as long as you mention this interview, which shows me that you actually got to the end of it.
Not a marketing scheme at all, or a sales technique. From what my understanding is, you're almost out of those. Because I know I don't have any more left in inventory.
Correct.
So what is made, and it's here, and it's almost gone.
Almost gone.
I thought
the first batch.
Yeah, I thought you had more inventory than you really do until I saw your inventory, and I said, wow, this has actually been moving a lot more than I thought it was.
Yeah.
And again, not a marketing technique, not any type of sales pitch or anything like that. Get it, because we will be making more of it, obviously, but by the time that cigar is remade, sits, ages, and is in the United States and ready for sales again, it might take a couple more months.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, and we are working on possibly distributing to other Tampeno retail places, so that will be coming in the near future. So we're working on that. So we're going to get the Pride out there to other shops. And if you are a shop that would like to carry the Pride, just reach out to us, and we'll work out all the details and definitely get you some stuff. But yeah, I want to thank you for your time.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate you coming on and being the first on our Elion interview series.
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I feel like I like sometimes going last. That way I can do a crazy intro where I have white doves flying in when I walk in, but that's okay. We'll do it again.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there'll be plenty more down the road.
Yeah,
When we grow and together and collaborate more.
Maybe next time we'll do it in Florida or in the factory.
Yeah. That'll be cool. Yeah. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in with us. We have George Rodriguez from Tampeno Cigars. See you next time. Hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube. Check us out on Instagram at Elion Cigar or at Facebook at Elion Cigar. Check out Tampeno at Tampeno Cigars.
Yep.
On Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Yeah.
TikTok.
Yeah.
I'm on everything.
All the outlets. Yeah. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.